Okay, folks, it is at last that time again. I'm going to show what new stuff I've got. Um, Obviously, you're not going to expect to be wowed by lots of amazing new visual things, but we've got some nice new stuff going on behind the scenes. So, do the usual. You've seen this a million times. And, well, the big thing and the main thing I want to demonstrate as much as is possible is the dynamic animation. Now, obviously, all that works behind the scenes, but I can give a little talk through of how it works so you can see it. So, I also have a load of new debug stuff in here as well, which I'll be using to show it. So debug's mostly the same as usual now, except I can quickly freeze everything with this, except supposedly it's not a normal pause. I can now step through things a frame at a time, and I've got all this output on the screen here. Obviously it's just overlapping everything, it's untidy, but it doesn't matter, it's debug. And you can see what's going on here. So just throw out a standing jab and pause it, and you can see a lot of stuff on here on the screen now. So we could start up a duration of the attack data itself, the block and hit advantage. Again, that's just calculated from the attack data, just through using the total duration, knowing when the last active hit is, and how much hit and block stun is configured to do. So that's all just calculated there, and then the rest from hit advantage down is all stuff to do with the actual animation. So the current frame is the actual animation frame. Frame timer is the internal timer that counts between animation frames. So that's each update tick of the game engine, and then of course interval is how many ticks are going to be before the next actual animation frame. So it's basically controlling the speed of the animation. The cycle timer is just the number of ticks in the current state, and of course then we've got the current breakpoint index and a little array of values there. So that's to do with the actual new dynamic code. So beforehand I had done some simple stuff where I just took the desired duration of the state and then just adjusted the speed of the animation to match that. But of course it's a bit too simplified. It works well for some simple things, but if the point in the animation where you want the attack to become active to match, say whatever, the character having their fist extended or whatever, doesn't quite sync up with the entire animation playing at a constant speed for the desired duration, then it all just falls apart. So what I've done now is not every, but it's optional, and I've worked it all into the hierarchy. But any sprite that's for an attacking animation, or it could be extended for other things as well, but mainly for things like this, it now has a defined breakpoint. So you can see with this one here, this is just a standing jab, and the breakpoint index at the minute is 1, but that's just because it's become active. Obviously it starts at 0. But the two breakpoints listed at the bottom are 2,3, 5,3, or 5,8. Sorry, not the best color for it. But essentially what that means is the second frame in the animation. Now the first number there is a 1 based index, so that's just the actual physical animation frames. So frame 2 is the first breakpoint, and that's when he has his fist extended, that's when the move has to become active. Sorry, hit my mic. And then the second one is the one that's automatically calculated. So the 2-3 is defined in the actual XML files, telling you about the sprite and all the data there. And then whenever this is loaded up, it'll calculate the last one for you, just using the desired duration that you fed it, and what the last frame is. So that just allows it to reuse the same logic for the end of the animation as well. So it just puts that on and treats the last frame as another breakpoint. So what I've really done with that is I've just fiddled that around in such a way that the same code I used before, almost, but similar logic then is used, just piecemeal. So it just chooses points in the animation to reset and recalculate everything, and then do the same sort of thing I was doing before, where I'm just adjusting the speed of the animation, working out if there's any leftover frames. So obviously not every desired duration is going to divide evenly, so you work out what extra frames there are, and extra ticks, and then you just speed up or slow down the animation as appropriate. So the way I have it set up is that it'll take the initial result when it divides the values, play that, and then whenever it reaches the point where increasing the interval by 1, i.e. slowing it down slightly, will will make it meet the desired duration perfectly, then it hits that point and then it changes the interval. So everything will go faster at the beginning and slow down slightly at the end to meet the desired duration. Probably explained that terribly well, but yeah, that's the general gist of it. So it just comes in parts. It's decides what speed it needs to go at, slows it down a little towards the end if it needs to meet the value exactly, so that it works out smoothly, and then each time it just increments to the next breakpoint, and then just a few calculations are done to take away expired time and what the values of the previous point were and such forth, to just get the same values for the next stretch. So between this breakpoint and the next, between the end of the animation, it'll just do a few calculations to get the same numbers of how long it's going to be in ticks before it gets there, how many frames it has to display, and just works out the same stuff. It's not even really that complicated, and it's one of those things that it got one of those real gotcha errors where I spent days trying to figure out what was wrong with it when it wasn't working, and it was really silly, as you would usually expect with programming problems. I wound up with like a little bit of logic was on the wrong side of a code block, and just everything fell apart. But it's not actually that complex, so just step through this as well. So now I've got this frame by frame step through, so you can see the values update, and then just go there and I can unpause it. So that's generally what that's doing. There's not a lot to it, so you can just see it again with some of the longer animations. See it stepping through and see how the values meet. So when frame timer equals interval, it steps on. Let's go through. A few other things as well, and so whenever the attack actually makes contact as well, like that, so you can see as it steps through, bang. So one thing you might notice as well is that the startup frame actually matches up with the last update tick of the desired animation frame, which is just a side effect really of the best way to actually program it to make sense. It would be slightly nicer to have it on the first, which is the way I initially implemented it, but then that wound up with the limitations of the way I'd calculated it. Meant I would have to make exceptions and do specific code for if you wanted a breakpoint in the first frame, because I was doing things on the other side of the point, I would end up with divide by 0 and other such nonsense. So I did it this way instead, and it's really not much of a big deal. It doesn't look too bad even in slow motion, and at full speed it's pretty much you can't really perceive it at all. As well, I've made a little small update here so that whenever an attack makes contact, the hitbox stays visible in debug mode and just gets grayed out, because that was a pain to debug beforehand, because it would just immediately disappear. So it just made it kind of a pain to debug what shape and size the boxes were when you were playing around with them, especially for close normals, because if you've done your close normals right, you're not going to be at a range where it will activate but also not connect. So it was just silly. I would often have to make them activate from further away just to debug them, and I just thought, this is silly, this is a much nicer solution. As you can see this animating away. Also, one thing I haven't pointed out here is that you'll notice as I'm updating these ticks here, the state timer, the cycle timer here, each character aren't updating. That's just because they're both in hit stop. So obviously whenever an attack makes contact, there's a defined number of ticks, and it usually varies by the strength of the attack, where both characters are just frozen, and it just to emphasize impact really. It just makes things look a bit nicer. But during that time, neither character will update and their state won't change or anything. So you'll notice like the numbers aren't going up yet, and then now they start again as they leave and start animating again. That's that. Let's see. So, and again, all these hitboxes as well that I'm running through, these have been completely redone again. Well, obviously I just modified them from where before. I didn't start from scratch, although for some of them were thrown so out of whack from the changes that they may as well have started again. But they're quite nice and fairly accurate now. Now obviously I haven't went through everything to make it exactly to the body shape, but frankly neither do the actual guys. You'll notice like that one there, the front arm isn't vulnerable on the way down. I may update that one to make the front arm vulnerable on the way down. I don't know. It's one of those things of, I think a crushing fierce punch like that is easy enough to punish him with as it is, but maybe not. Okay, so what else is there with the debug really? So you've got the nice slow motion step through. We've got extra visible hitboxes with the complete redo of the collision data and that. So I think after that we're just on to actual new features. Most of these are very small, but I've done a lot of modifications to the special moves. Now fireballs are the same as they were really. Nothing much different about how they were. I think I've tweaked a few small things, but nothing worth sharing now. The other special moves though have a bit more to them. Time's about to run out, so I'll let it show this in the next round. But yeah, so both characters have had their uppercuts and spin kicks updated. So they now are a bit closer to how they were. So Muse always knocks down in the first hit, and you'll notice these aren't the silly placeholder hitboxes they had before, but his will always whiff on someone who's crouching. So even if you hit them, if I can do this with my hands the way it is. So yeah, you're just never going to hit someone who's crouching with that move. Ken's on the other hand, again I'm giving myself a hard time with controlling both characters, but Ken's on the other hand will, so if you see that in slow motion, but yeah, so that's another little update there. So I've added a new property to attacks now, so an attack can force a stance on hit. So you can force someone into a crouching position with an overhead or an uppercut or whatever that will force them into a standing position to guarantee that certain follow-ups will hit, which is a fairly common thing in most fighting games. So in most actual Street Fighter games, then Ken's Tatsu has a hit at the start, which Ryu's doesn't, where he lifts his knees, so that forces people into a standing position and guarantees the rest of the move hits if you're close enough. So I've added that there. And as you can see as well, Ken's Tatsu doesn't knock down, it just lands all of the hits, whereas Ryu's just hits harder and hits them once and knocks them down. The air versions again have been tweaked as well, so they're slightly different. They all do 2 spins in the air, and they're still hard to hit people with. I think I may have to speed these up a little bit, because most of the actual games the characters spin faster than I have them here. So the way I've done it here, it's much easier to miss someone between the spins with the air versions and things, so I might tweak that at some point. The uppercuts as well, so if I can get this in slow motion. Oh, there you go, so nice there. So you'll see he has no hitbox in his top half there, because that's how that works. So when you've got an uppercut like that, you've got the light uppercut has upper body invincibility for a few frames, because this is the one that's designed to anti-air with. So you step through a few frames, see it becomes active here before he's vulnerable. But if you swept him or whatever during that time, it would still work. And step through a few more frames, and then he becomes fully vulnerable as usual. I think that top box is coming in a bit frame earlier than it should. Should we tweak that? There you go. Step through that. Where, for example, the medium version, no hitbox at all, or no hurtbox at all, sorry. So again, he's completely invincible for the first several frames. Traditionally, this is the most invincible version. He goes and he comes in, does that. Yeah, so I've got to tweak that hitbox, things like that. And as you can see, all of his versions only deal a hit and damage on the first hit, knock down immediately. Whereas Ken, ever the special snowflake, has his own version. Just let this play through. So we get Ken's, the light version does a single hit like Ryu's and knocks down, but again once we get into the others, my keyboard shoryukens aren't on point. So there's a medium version, again 2 hits, leaves standing on the first hit as well. So if I can manage to go with fierce, oh yes, I'm on the ball, I should do a fierce keyboard shoryuken into hitting my debug pause key way over there. And the fun thing you might notice here as well, the hit advantage is minus 9,999. So that's just a placeholder I've put in just for moves like I think it only happens for the Tatsus and the Shoryukens just because they're sort of awkward multi-state moves, and of course the Shoryuken leaves you airborne and it's up to gravity as to when you land and recover. So you can't really, it's not easy to calculate that, so I've just left that, you know, placeholder value in. Although I probably should output that escape value as just question mark or something, so it doesn't look as silly. But here we go. So here's the hard SRK hitting. No hurt box on Ken, he doesn't care. There's the first hit. Step through. So you can see it leaves you in a standing state with the first hit. Should do there, and then the second hit lifts him up. And then again, you get the third hit. Takes a wee second. Baff. Looks a wee bit funny there. Maybe slow motion it, but yeah, so there you go. There's that. So they've got their unique properties that they usually do on those. So what else have we got? I think as well, it might not be immediately obvious, but there's landing states in those as well now. So you notice so if I like hold up or whatever here, you know, Ryu still lands, goes into that little crouching animation for several frames. So that's just his recovery from that, and the same happens for the Tatsu as well, even the grounded version. Though it's quite quick, so you don't see it, but you can see if I hold up, he ducks for a little second as he lands before he jumps. So that's just the landing recovery frames of that, where, you know, he can't do anything. And similarly, it's there for normal jumps as well, except as described in some of the earlier posts, you know, when you do a normal jump and you land, it's only if you did something in the air that you can't, you know, block or whatever from that state for a few frames. But it's you know, it's not really something you can really see with your eyes. It's very subtle. And other than that, we've basically just got, I think, the simple juggles and counter hits. I'm wasting time in this round again, but we can probably show a counter hit here. So if I get Ken to throw out a hard kick, and oh, I'm rubbish. Nah, let it go. I'll let that one run out. Do it next round. But yeah, so counter hits are in now as well. So it's a fairly simple thing. It's really just checking if you know, when a card is hit, are you in an attacking state, and are you during the startup frames. So you can see here as well, I'm pressing a button through here just before it gets hit. Counter hit. Message comes up. Now it's maybe a bit confusing because I have the debug information all up on the screen as well. So he gets hit with that. At the minute, I've just made counter hits do a couple of extra frames of hit stun, and I think like a 25% bonus damage, and just throws the message up on the screen. So just simple stuff, just placeholder, whatever. Just, you know, the function's there and it's supported.